Tom Garrett, 67, a former Special Forces operative, lived in the forgotten crevices of Queens, behind a weathered apartment complex where shadows fell heavy and compassion ran thin. No one remembered when he first appeared there, nor did they care. He had constructed a makeshift shelter out of a torn tarp, cardboard, and unyielding pride. Never once did he beg. Never once did he cause trouble. At precisely 6 a.m. each morning, he would rise, face east, and salute the rising sun. It was a ritual he never missed, regardless of rain, snow, or illness. To the residents, he was just that homeless guy. Adults looked past him as if he didn't exist, while children were warned to stay away. Some crossed the street at the mere sight of him. His beard had grown long and gray, his clothing faded from time and weather, yet always clean, hand-washed in public sinks with military precision. He moved with discipline even in destitution, holding himself with the quiet dignity of someone who had once worn a uniform. Then one morning, the new building owner, Mark Dunley, 38, arrived. The picture of modern ambition. Crisp white shirt, sports car, and a voice that dripped with entitlement. His plan was simple. Buy low, flip fast. Upon inspecting the property, Mark scowled at the backlot. "Clean this up," he ordered his crew, referring to Tom as social garbage dragging down property value. "I don't care where he goes. Just make sure he's gone by the end of the week. We're putting in security cameras and a fence." The next morning, Mark confronted Tom. The rain leaked through the tarp, splashing across Tom's weathered face as he slept. Mark kicked the shelter hard. "This is private property. Get out before I call the police. You've got until noon." Tom didn't react with anger. He didn't plead. As if this was just another day in a long line of indignities, he calmly began folding his blanket into perfect corners and packing his few belongings. Not a single word of protest. Every movement was deliberate. A quiet act of defiance and dignity. As he reached for a worn notebook, an old folder slipped from his bag. The edge peeked out. United States Army Top Secret. The folder, aged and fragile, had been protected meticulously in plastic. Mark stepped forward, ready to continue his tirade, but the words froze on his tongue as his eyes caught that label. "What's that?" he asked, voice suddenly uncertain. Tom glanced at the folder, then at Mark. "Nothing important," he murmured, reaching for it. But something had shifted. Mark's arrogance wavered. The man in rags was no longer invisible. The contempt gave way to confusion, even respect. For the first time, Mark looked at Tom and saw him. If you had witnessed this moment, what would you have done? Spoken up? Or walked away like everyone else? Tom had served 2 grueling tours in the Middle East. His unit, Echo Raven, was one of those elite, unspoken names whispered only in secure halls. An off-the-record force for impossible missions. High-value extractions, hostage rescues, and intelligence gathering that saved lives, yet would never be acknowledged. When he was discharged, many of his records were lost, erased by the veil of classification. His missions didn't exist on paper. The government's way of saying, "We can't admit what you did." For the past 10 years, Tom had approached the Department of Veterans Affairs 4 times. Every time, the answer was the same. "We need proof." His incomplete file drew suspicion. "The proof is classified," Tom would respond, each time a little quieter. "Then we can't help you," came the bureaucratic shrug, as if suggesting he was lying. One clerk even told him, "There are resources for homeless individuals who aren't veterans." The insult was clear. To them, he was just another fraud. Once, he was denied entry into a veterans facility because he couldn't prove his service. That night, he slept in the rain, clutching the folder of classified documents that no one believed. At a church soup kitchen, a volunteer eyed him coldly. "Are you really a veteran? Where exactly did you serve?" When he declined to break his oath of silence, she gave him a half portion. Others in the neighborhood weren't so subtle. "He's probably making it up," whispered a dog walker. "Just trying to get sympathy," said another. "Real heroes find jobs," declared a man who'd never served a day in his life. Some filmed him, mocking his shelter online. "This corner stinks. Someone blast him with a hose." Local media once featured his image under the headline, "Homelessness Rising Authorities Powerless." They never asked his name. As Mark stood there, stunned, an elderly man emerged from the ground floor apartment. Mr. Delaney, 75, cane in hand, a fellow veteran. Seeing the seal on the folder, his eyes widened. Echo Raven? No way. That was the rescue unit. They were legends. The ones sent when the impossible had to be done. Mark, still grasping the folder, dared to open it. Inside were faded photographs of Tom receiving medals. His younger face the same, but for fewer wrinkles. One photo showed him with his arm in a sling, standing beside other soldiers whose faces had been redacted. A commendation letter from a major general thanked Sergeant Garrett and Echo Raven for an operation that saved 43 American lives under undisclosed conditions. There were mission code names, blacked out details, and a past written in secrets. Delaney whispered, "This man isn't just a veteran. He's one of them, the kind they erase. Used and discarded because to acknowledge them is to acknowledge missions that never existed." Mark's face turned pale. The man he had tried to evict wasn't some nuisance. He was a soldier who had paid in blood and been abandoned by the very nation he served. Who's responsible when such men fall through the cracks? The government? Or all of us who never stopped to look? Then Mark remembered something. His own father, a combat vet who returned from Afghanistan in 2003 with haunted eyes and gratitude for unnamed men who saved his unit during Operation Mountain Viper. Mark had been only 16 when his father came home. "Did you serve in Afghanistan? 2003? Mountain Viper?" Mark asked, voice no longer proud, but reverent. Tom gave a slow, solemn nod. "I'm not at liberty to discuss operational details," he said instinctively. Among the documents was a sealed letter, red wax intact, addressed simply, "To whom it may concern." Mark handed it to him. "Never had reason to open it," Tom murmured. "Didn't think it would change anything." But with trembling fingers, he broke the seal. Inside, a handwritten letter from his commander dated 1985. And, "Tom, if you ever need to prove you've lived, show this letter. I hope society never forgets men like you. What you did can never be told, but must never be forgotten. Your country owes you a debt it may never acknowledge. If you're reading this, someone needs to know you served with more honor than most can comprehend. Colonel James Westfield, U.S. Army Special Operations." Mark's eyes welled. My father used to call them ghosts, men who appeared from nowhere and disappeared again. He said he owed them his life. The entire encounter had been filmed by a neighbor upstairs. The video, starting with Mark's eviction threats and ending in stunned silence, went viral. Mr. Delaney posted what little he knew about Echo Raven. Within hours, public sentiment flipped. How did we let this happen? He's a hero. This is a national disgrace. 3 days later, veterans from multiple states began arriving. Word had spread. They brought food, not handouts, but meals made with honor. They brought gear, a tent, blankets, temporary measures while something permanent could be arranged. A young attorney, herself a veteran's daughter, vowed to restore Tom's benefits. "The system's broken," she said, "but it's navigable with the right persistence." Mark hosted a press conference, handing Tom keys to apartment 3A, rent-free for life. News crews captured every second. "This unit's worth $1 million, Mark said. "But his honor is priceless. So is the life of my father, who came home because of men like Sergeant Garrett." Ding. Tom, standing tall despite arthritic knees, accepted the keys. "I accept this on behalf of those who couldn't come home," he said quietly. The crowd fell silent. They knew this wasn't just about one man. It was about every forgotten warrior who served in the shadows. A reporter asked, "Mr. Garrett, how do you feel after all these years of being ignored?" Tom answered, "I wasn't fighting for recognition then, and I'm not now. I just wanted to be seen as human. But there are many others like me. They're the ones we need to find." The quote made headlines. Veterans Affairs began reevaluating policies. Senators called for reform. A new task force was created to review cases of veterans with incomplete or classified records. The VA office that once turned Tom away now operated under a new directive. Help first, verify later. Tom moved into his apartment, a bright one-bedroom unit overlooking the same streets where he'd once been invisible. On his first morning, he still rose at 6 a.m., still faced east, and saluted the sun. Only this time, he wasn't cold. The soft bed hurt his back at first. The silenced walls unsettled him. For a week, neighbors found him sleeping on the balcony, more comfortable under open skies. A plaque was mounted by the elevator. In honor of Sergeant Thomas Garrett, silent warrior, for service that cannot be spoken of, but must never be forgotten. Mark changed too. The man who once chased profit now chased purpose. He created Echo Shelter, a nonprofit helping veterans navigate bureaucracy, especially those with classified records. What happened to Tom, he told the press, should never happen to anyone. City officials met with Tom. The mayor apologized in person. "We've been chasing numbers instead of people," he admitted. The state began revising veteran outreach policies, starting with Tom's story. In the final scene, Tom carefully refolded the old letter and placed it in his Bible, not for proof, but for remembrance. He looked out the window at a neighborhood reborn. Below, a boy, about 8 years old, stood in the courtyard, the only child who'd ever greeted him. The boy saluted. Tom returned the gesture with a soft smile, a nod, like a general acknowledging a young recruit. A torch passed. That night, Tom wrote in a journal given by fellow veterans, "Today, I finally came home from war. It took 40 years, but I'm home." Have you ever met someone like Tom? A forgotten soul carrying a story no one wanted to hear? If so, share their name or memory in the comments. If you believe justice delayed is still worth fighting for, subscribe to AZN Stories, where the unseen finally get their voices back.